In newer releases of Planning Analytics Workspace, charting has come a long way, and we finally have that self-service charting feature that we've always been looking for. Now, some key features to know of when you are working with charts that already exist. Chances are you might be working on a sheet like this, where your charts are a smaller part of a larger window. So if you click into any of your charts, as you can with any widget, you will see in the top right corner this little expand option. And if you click on that, you can all of a sudden get a full screen view of your chart. And certainly on some charts where the data starts getting more congested, this gives you the option to truly visualize what is in there. Also, if you hover over any of the bars or lines, whatever your chart may be in, you can see the data point highlighted as a pop-up box. And then if you click on an individual bar or icon, it will highlight that one and hide everything else. And likewise, if you have a legend showing beside your chart, you can click one of the element names in the legend and it will highlight the related line, bar, or whatever it may be in the chart itself. Now, what we may want to do, of course, is filter this a little bit more. Now, chances are, if we make some changes on the screen that we are working with, the data we will be seeing is synchronized, so our charts do update accordingly. But sometimes we want to go beyond that. And in those cases, when we are in the chart, if we click the fields option in the top right corner, it brings up the detail behind what is in here, and we can start making some changes. So for example, you can click in one of the element names that is shown, or a set name as it may be, and it brings up a window that looks very similar to the set editor that we've seen in the set editor video, and you can work with your data in the same way there. So you can select predefined sets to view your data in a different way, or you can use the pencil icon to go to the full set editor window, and you can choose your elements or sets in that manner, so you have full flexibility over what you're working with. But what we're going to look at here is how to create one of these charts from scratch. So in this case, what I often like to do is start off by working in an exploration view instead, because I find that that tends to be easier for me personally to visualize how to get the data that I want set up before I convert it into a chart. So here what I'll do is bring up the overview so I can see everything that's in here. And in this case, I'm going to want to create a relatively simple line chart where I see my revenue progressing over the months. But in this case, my time dimension here is a combination of month and year, but maybe I'm going to want to see more than 1 year at a time. So by working in the exploration view here, what I can do is if I click this icon in the top left corner, it will expand my server and it will highlight the cube that this is relating to. So I can then expand the cube and see what extra information I have available that I might want to use in my chart. So if I expand the time dimension here, I can see I'm just working with a single time dimension in this view, but instead I want to have years and months shown separately. And when I try and drag them in, at first we see that there's no yellow bar appearing indicating that I can actually drag it in. And if I drop it, it doesn't do anything, it disappears. So I need to make sure I am in edit mode before I do this. And when I click edit mode, what we see is now when I drag it in, we get this sort of yellow orange bar. So that indicates that I can use it. So I'm going to bring over the year and the month hierarchies for my time dimension. But that gives me pretty much everything I want to see here. So once again, clicking into my view, in the context toolbar, it tells me that it's currently in exploration, but I want to choose a line chart. And as we can see, there are many other charting options we have available. All of them are a little bit different, but they follow a similar way of working when setting them up. So with our line chart in place, we can see that I only have one line on here, and it's put my stores on the rows. And that is not what I want. So first of all, I'm going to expand this, and I'm going to go back into that fields option that we were looking at before that gives us the ability to start actually rendering this chart in a way that I want to see it. So on my Y axis, it has put revenue in there. And I think that's quite reasonable. It's revenue that I want to see on my Y axis. So I'll leave that there. But this here where it says display name for store. So that's sort of a combination of the set/alias name, but it is the store dimension. I can tell that because when I hover over it, we see store.store, and that means it's the store hierarchy in the store dimension. But it's showing the correct set of elements that I want to see. It's just showing them in the wrong place. So what I really want down the bottom here is my months. So I'm going to go to my time.month one here, and I'm going to drag that up and swap it with my x-axis. So great, I now have months across my rows, and I'm going to bring those stores that we were looking at before to the option here called color. And when that's dropped in, we see for each of our stores, we will get a different color of line on my chart. And now, of course, we see we have a problem. The problem being that in my months, we also have the full consolidation for the full year or the all month element. And that is really going to mess with my chart. So I'm going to go back to this month option we have here. And in the levels, I have some levels in here. So leaf level would just bring back the lowest elements in there. Level 000 is always the highest option. So if I click 000, it only brings us the top consolidation, which in this case is all month. So instead of that, I want to go one level below level 0, which is actually one level up to level 1. And when I see that, now we have our months in here. And it's looking a little bit more reasonable. But again, we have a very high line going on over here, which when I hover over it, I can actually see, if I click one of my data points, that that is the FR element from my store dimension. FR being the consolidation France. So similar to how I had a consolidation for my months, I also have a consolidation for my store that I don't want. So I'm going to go into the set editor here and just make sure I've only got the elements that I want to see in there. And also I'm going to turn on the alias to give me the proper store names, because otherwise in my legend that we see up here, we just have the codes, and in my case, they're not that useful. So apply and close. Now we're getting to look a little bit better. But of course, when I was in the exploration view, I brought in both year and month, even though I'm only showing month in my chart. So at the moment, for the year, it's on the consolidation of all of our years, which is a little bit strange, but I can click in there and choose one individual year to filter the data accordingly. Or what I could potentially do in here is if I drag that up into the repeat row section, now what we see is for each of the year elements, we get an individual band. So all of a sudden we've got multiple charts shown in here. And that is also for me including 2023, 24, 25, 26, which have no data. So I'm going to go up to the top here, and our suppress zeros icon, I'm going to suppress zeros on rows. So when I apply that, it gets rid of those extra ones that we didn't want. And all of a sudden it's looking a little bit cleaner, but we still have an all year consolidation that I don't want to see. So I'm going to change that year dimension to a level, the same way we did for months. So that gets rid of the all year. So now I have 18, 19, 20, 21 and 22 shown in here. And the chart's getting to be looking a little bit more like what I want. So at the moment it's showing the correct data. I'm happy with this, but perhaps I also want to play about with the formatting a little bit and make it a little bit prettier. And to do that, we need to have our edit mode turned on, which is this pencil. And when we do, that's what opens up this properties icon in the top right. And if I click into there, we have some high level options. So synchronize This allows us to synchronize it with other widgets that are in the book. So if I have synchronize dimension turned on, and if I change something else in my book, that, for example, my version or store filter, it would filter my chart accordingly. But I can turn off individual dimensions or turn on individual dimensions. But for the time being, I'm going to undo that and go back to having the synchronization turned off. In the general section, you do get very general settings in here. So you can set the layout, so the position of your chart within the view that you are looking at, and the size of it, so you can make it bigger or smaller. And in the appearance section, you can start playing about with the fill color. So you can fill the background to something that you want to see, and you can put a border on it. Also, you can show a title and give your chart a title. So that is something I am going to do, revenue by year. If you highlight that, you can change the font size, underline, bold, everything you would expect to be able to do. But the visualization tab is where charts really get a little bit more interesting. So you can change the color palette and all of our lines will then change. But what we really want to see at the moment is, let's go into the axes. So in here, I've called my chart revenue by year. So people should know what it's showing. But also in my columns, my y-axes, all of them list revenue on it. So I don't need to show revenue. They know it is that. So that is my value axes title. So I can untick it and that goes away, makes it a little bit cleaner. Likewise, people probably know that May, June, July are months. So I can show, or I can hide the item axes title as well to get rid of month. And you do get other options in here, lots of other options. So you can hide the actual element names themselves. I don't think there's often a good reason to do that, but sometimes there maybe is. You can change the font size on them, the actual font itself, all sorts of things around that. On the legend that we have up here, you can decide to hide it altogether, or you can change your position. So I quite often like to have it on the right rather than on the top, which tends to be the default. And then finally, you have some general charting options, and these particularly will change depending on what chart type you're working with. But for a line chart, for example, linear is where it goes straight between your points, but you can also choose something like cardinal, where all of a sudden it starts putting a curve onto them. And you have many other options in there, such as step. Generally, most people will work with linear the majority of the time. You normally have to have quite specific purposes to use some of the other things. But as you can see, there's a lot of options in here to design your charts in the way you really want to see them. And once you get happy with the chart that you have in place, if you are an end user and you don't have access to save down the book that you have started working from, always remember that you can click the save option to save your view and take it away into your personal folder, which is always a nice thing to do. If you've spent a lot of time working on something, you want to be able to refer back to it later on. And after refreshing this, if I then go into my personal folder on the left here, we can see it is there for me to refer back to at a later point. So we can save as many of these charts and view visualizations as we want, and we can start putting them into our own personal books to refer back to.